Hi, welcome to All About Ag podcast, where we share our insights about the world of agriculture.
Whether you've grown up in agriculture, are a curious consumer, or someone just looking to learn more about the industry that feeds the world, this podcast has something for you. So tune in weekly to explore current events, hot topics, and on-farm experiences.
Okay, this week we're going to kind of talk about the egg prices in the markets and what that's doing, and as well as a new thing that has come out, which is MILK50.
So we have some articles because, as many of you probably know, the situation in the egg market is absolutely crazy right now. Prices are really high, and that's for a few reasons. We've shared a short on our social media pages about it, but the main reason is the cage-free laws, but also the avian flu. But go check out that short to learn more about those. But we actually have some articles talking about how eggs were actually stolen in Pennsylvania. So there were 100,000 eggs stolen out of a organic producer called Pete and Gary's Organics in Pennsylvania. And they said they have no idea how this happened, but with the rising prices, the value of what they stole was more than $40,000 worth of eggs. How can someone steal that many eggs? It's kind of crazy.
Why?
Yeah, so that's how crazy the situation is in the market, right? The prices are so incredibly high that people are literally trying to steal eggs. And that's very concerning for people that have like local eggs, like, you know, they just sell in like a roadside stand, especially if it's like on the honor system. I mean, people are just going crazy for eggs. But why are people going so crazy for eggs? Well, there's actually a new study that came out that says eating an egg, like one egg or more than an egg per week, was actually linked to a 45% lowered risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. So not only are eggs a staple in our food groups, I know we consume eggs on a pretty regular basis. They have a lot of protein, they're packed with a lot of nutrients that we need, but now there's also a study saying that they're linked to a 45% lower risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. So that's actually pretty cool. But it also says that 39% was of this protective effect was mediated, basically meaning that people that were consuming the eggs, they found that there's important nutrients in the eggs for their brain, and it was all monitored over like 6.5 years. So this study's been a long time in the making, but eggs are actually extremely good for us, and the market is not very good right now. So it costs a lot for people to buy eggs. So with Easter coming up, that's kind of what we want to talk about is, what are people going to do? Do you think people are still going to buy eggs to dye them and do so for Easter?
We'll bite the bullet and just pay the higher price is my guess.
Yeah, it's just going to be a little bit expensive this year. And we're probably expecting to see a lot more plastic egg sales, which isn't exactly the best for the environment or anything like that, but just with the high price of eggs, it might become a little bit more difficult. But I know I have fond memories of dyeing eggs as a kid, and they were always eggs from like our own farm, but still it's something fun to do with like your kids for Easter. So with Easter coming up and egg prices soaring, it might create some problems for consumers. But all right, another article we have talks about the best way to store eggs. So a lot of people are actually buying eggs in bulk. So if they go to like a roadside stand or something, they'll buy like multiple dozens. I know my family, like back home, we sell eggs and we'll restock like 12 dozen like every weekend, and they'll be sold within like 3 days, which is kind of insane because we have 24 chickens, and if they're laying every single day, we get a decent amount of eggs every single week. And when we first purchased the chickens, 6 months ago before they started laying, we thought, there might not actually be a market for the eggs. Like, that's a lot of chickens, that's a lot of eggs. We thought we were gonna have to eat eggs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But with the current situation in the markets, a lot of people are buying eggs. But they're also buying them in bulk and then storing them. So there's like several different ways you can store eggs. But it says the best way to do it is just keep them at 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Or below, like in the coldest part of your fridge. Don't freeze them, obviously, but keep them nice and cold. Leave them in their original carton. So like you see a lot of those like restocking videos of people trying to make like an aesthetic looking fridge, but just leave them in their original carton.
That's actually worse.
Yeah, that's how they'll last the longest. But if stored correctly, they can last up to 4 weeks or even longer. So you can buy a carton of eggs as a single person, maybe buy 18 count, and it could last you an entire month depending on how quickly you consume them.
It says past the date marked.
Yeah, or even longer after the date that's marked on the carton. So a lot of times people think the second food expires on the expiration date. It's going bad, but
yeah, eggs are good for a month after.
Yeah, and in all reality, a lot of times, like most foods that have an expiration date, you could probably consume them within a week or so after. But for eggs, it can be even a month after their expiration date. So that's something really cool to keep in mind. But there have been a lot of headlines about eggs recently. There's like, obviously, if you've seen the float test or the shake test, there's a bunch of ways to test to see if your eggs are still good. But just as a reminder, egg prices are so high. So a lot of grocery stores are like limiting the amount you can buy. So you probably won't be able to get a whole ton to store, but yeah, articles from NBC News, from USA Today. I mean, there's a bunch of information out there on eggs right now because it is the hot topic in the market. So it's interesting to see a consumer's perspectives about eggs. I know for us, like growing up on a farm and raising our own eggs, we've never really had an issue with it. Like I know your family did that for a while too, and they like had an oversupply.
We have eggs every week.
Yeah, and
it's
so
like all we eat for breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. So eggs are pretty much a staple. I mean, this like reminds me of like the COVID shortage when there like wasn't toilet paper. Yeah, and there wasn't things on the grocery stores. Like people were freaking out.
Now when anything happens, like it's always again like the first thing to sell out is just toilet paper again, and it's like I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, now it's like the shelves for eggs are bare. Like I went to a grocery store and saw people literally looking at the shelf with no eggs, and they like didn't know what to do. You know, because it's like, where else are they going to get eggs if you don't live near like a rural area or someone who sells eggs or like know someone? Like there's literally like black markets of people selling eggs, you know, basically under the table, you know, trying to figure out a way to get eggs. So it's a crazy world out there right now. But I do know with the avian flu, there's obviously been a lot of deaths among chicken herds, but poultry. But the USDA has agreed to provide like a stipend or some sort of payment to help restock those herds, but those flocks. But obviously, it's going to take a long time. I mean, it takes some breeds up to 6 months, if not longer, before they start producing eggs. So you can expect this same situation in the egg market to last for quite a while, and definitely through the Easter weekend. So that's all about eggs for now. We'll obviously have more to share. We just wanted to give some of those crazy story headlines out to you guys because you've probably heard a lot about the avian flu and the cage-free laws. We talked about those on our page already, but these are some more crazy headlines from major news companies talking about the situation of eggs. All right, now switching over to the dairy industry, there's actually an extremely exciting announcement from Dairy Farmers of America, which is like the big cooperative, pretty much all of the Midwest, most of the US actually. I think the only area they really don't have any sort of control over is the West Coast because that's dairy gold country. But Dairy Farmers of America, they came out with this new drink and it's called MILK50. And essentially what this is it's a whole new product, similar to have you had Fairlife Core Power drinks? Like those shakes that are like high in protein, similar to those, but the milk itself like is just ultra filtered, and that's what they use. So instead of like adding a protein powder to make it like a shake drink or something like that, they use this process called ultrafiltration, which is basically just filtering the milk, and by filtering it in a probably way more complex way than we're willing to explain, they're able to remove the lactose, so people who are lactose intolerant can consume MILK50, but also by doing that, they're increasing the amount of protein. So there's 9 grams of protein in MILK50, which is like 1 more gram than a regular amount, which is still a really good thing. And then there's 3 grams of sugar, which is a lot less sugar. So it's actually 75% less sugar than skim milk even. So a lot less sugar, 0 lactose. It's entirely dairy, and it has the protein that you need for your diet. But on top of that, it's called MILK50 because there's only 50 calories in the milk. So it meets the nutritional profile of what a lot of consumers are wanting. Like we've noticed a shift in consumers wanting higher protein, less calories, less sugars, right? That's pretty much the diet. Like the carnivore diet is basically becoming people's diets, but including dairy as a part of that. So that's pretty interesting. But they have this whole campaign page on MILK50. There's 3 different flavors. yeah, vanilla, original, and then chocolate. And they're all lactose free. So it's actually really cool. They're going by the brand Dairy Pure, which is a brand that Dairy Farmers of America owns. But it's a really cool thing. And this was literally just launched a few weeks ago, maybe the end of January, so maybe more than a few weeks ago. But a lot of people believe that this is like fluid milk's comeback. They think that this is gonna help the dairy industry to come back from the reduced milk sales. It was believed that nearly 5 years ago, consumers had less than half of a cup of milk per day, which the recommended amount is 3 servings a day, right? You're supposed to have something with breakfast, something with lunch, something with dinner, 3 servings of dairy a day. But just 5 years ago, consumers were having half of a cup of milk a day, which is not nearly enough. But now there's a big shift, right? Maybe you've seen there's like promotional campaigns with the Greek yogurt guy who's like a costume character, and he's on social media trying to promote Greek yogurt because it's high in protein and fits that consumer profile. But this MILK50 is huge. And essentially it's supposed to help consumers pivot back to drinking milk and reaching for milk. I know that those Core Power products are extremely popular. Like Fairlife has their Core Power.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah, and they taste pretty good, and they have a lot of protein, which consumers like. And a lot of times they're just like a protein shake, so people will replace that in their diets for like a protein shake after a workout or something. But yeah, having the chocolate option and the vanilla option for this milk, I think will also be really helpful. But I'm curious to see how the sales go. I mean, they said that it was launched in all Target locations currently. That was like their first retailer, and then also like a lot of smaller retailers on the West Coast, which I think is DFA's way of trying to get more sales advertising on the West Coast, because they don't really own any farms or cooperatives over there, pieces of the cooperative over there. But anyways, it's supposed to be an extremely good thing. So yeah, the Fairlife, that popular beverage we've been talking about, Fairlife, they have the product line. It has 13 grams of protein in an 8-ounce container, and then their Core Power has 24 grams of protein. Some of them can even get up to like 39 grams of protein that they're adding to that milk. So in one singular like glass or container of milk, you can get like a high percentage of your protein intake for the day. Yeah, and so they haven't done a great job with that, but the MILK50 is trying to create basically the most natural option possible to getting higher protein. So like Core Power and like their Elite Core Power, which is that one with extra grams of protein, they're adding like protein powders and stuff to the milk, which is still a good way to market to consumers. I think it's a great way to change something simple as milk, add the protein, add some flavoring, and get a whole new market of consumers. But those have like high amounts of additives to get to that protein level. A standard glass of whole milk is 8 grams of protein, and that goes down like 2%, 1% skim would have less. And so this having 9 grams of protein, it doesn't sound like much because it's just 1 more gram, but you'd be surprised. Like, consumers want that in their diets. But the main marketing ploy for this is the 50 calories. So it only has 50 calories, which is extremely cool. But there's been a lot of articles coming out saying that MILK50 is disrupting the dairy aisle. You know, it's like the newest thing on the market. So I think it'll be a pretty cool thing. I'm excited to actually see it in a store here in the Midwest and be able to try it. I would assume it would just taste like regular milk or regular chocolate milk, but it would have a little bit less sugar. But there's been a lot of technology, research, innovation that's going on in the dairy industry to try and revamp their image. A lot of consumers still picture the dairy industry just as like your grandma or grandpa milking cows by hand, right? That's the vision of the dairy industry, or you know, cows in green pastures gallivanting around, right? But the dairy industry really is an epicenter of innovation. And I can't say that enough, because there's a lot of technology and research. Like Dairy Farmers of America, the cooperative, they even have like an internship for students to do research and innovation at like their innovation centers. So there's like a lot that goes into it. It's not just your grandma and grandpa's backyard anymore on a little wooden stool. We've gotten to be able to see like robotic milkers. We've seen carousel milkers. There's like a lot of technology out there. Yeah, we've pretty much seen every style of milking parlor. But there's a lot of technology out there, and even little farms are starting to add that technology too. So it's really cool to see. There's a lot going on behind the scenes, and now on the food side of the dairy industry, there's even more going on to advance the options in the dairy aisle. And hopefully MILK50 lands its permanent place along with milk and keeps those alternatives with less protein, less nutrients, more towards the lactose-free section of the dairy aisle. So that's the hope, to switch consumers' mindsets, keep them on dairy, and enhance the market share for farmers. So that's all we have for today. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about the egg situation, which is kind of concerning for consumers, but hopefully there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel. I know there will be, and for the success of the dairy industry currently. So those are two industries that are very different and don't cross very often, but in the grocery store and in consumers' carts, that's where they do. So making sure that when you're in the grocery store, try and get those eggs. We know they're going to be expensive, but they're still important for your diets, for your health, and they're a staple. But also try MILK50. We're excited to try it, and hopefully it becomes a success for the dairy industry. So anything else for the good of the order?
Nope.
All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.